Welcome back to the report. Now, the Muslim community in Sri Lanka has in recent years been at the brunt of intimidation and acts of violence said to be instigated by the Bodu Bala Sena, or BBS, a Sinhalese Buddhist nationalist organisation. Muslims on their property were attacked by a Sinhalese Buddhist mob in June 2014 in the towns of Alusgama, Barawala and Darga town. These attacks were widely said to have been provoked by BBS rallies prior to the incident. This was under the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. But the election of the President Sirisena in 2015 gave rise to a sense of optimism following promises to preserve the ethnic and religious harmony of the country. But nearly 2 years on, the Muslim community haven't seen any progress. This month, the Justice Minister met the BBS and this stoked tensions between the Muslim and Buddhist communities. Well, joining me now to discuss this meeting and the wider situation facing the Muslim community in Sri Lanka, we're pleased to have Azath Salley, who's the former Deputy Mayor of Colombo and leader of the National Unity Alliance, and Irfan Iqbal, who's Chief Editor at Sonakar.com, an online hub for Sri Lankan Muslims worldwide. Welcome to the programme, both of you. Azath, why, when there was hope, when the new president came in, has this violence continued?
Actually speaking, we had 436 complaints during the former regime of Mahinda Rajapaksa. And 8 January 2015, we were instrumental in bringing the Sirisena government. And today, we are sad to say, we have another 236 complaints already made to various police stations. Actually, the situation is so bad that the Justice Minister, whom I spoke to and wanted the Muslim community to meet with him, seeking justice for the community. But prior to meeting us, he gave a call to the Bodu Bala Sena and wanted to meet with them in Parliament. That was the first thing that they did. And nevertheless, we thought, okay, let him brief the Bodu Bala Sena what he is trying to talk to us, because he being a Sinhalese and a predominant Sinhala area he comes from. So there had been a lot of rumors going that the minister should not be allowed to enter temples. So there was an issue, so we didn't take it very seriously. But nevertheless, we went and met him and explained everything. He said, don't worry, I'm going to put both of you all together to discuss and sort out matters. So that gave us some encouragement. And when we see nothing happened of that sort, but this same minister took the Bodu Bala Sena to the president twice, asking for justice for them. The victims are the Muslims, but the Muslims were met by the President, the Prime Minister, Minister of Justice, the IGP, the Minister in charge of Police. All these people were met and promises made that the Buddhist monk will be arrested, but up to today, this has not taken place.
Okay. Irfan, just tell us a little bit about the background to the BBS then. Who are they? How much support do they have?
I mean, they are widely accepted, especially throughout the online community. I mean, their medium is social media, basically. They don't get much exposure in local medias, though. However, it's widely believed the organization itself was formed by previous defense secretary, who is the brother of previous president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Now, although he denies it, it is widely believed that they were operating under the guidance of government or with the influence or some sort of support from the government. So they've continued. Now, throughout this period, in this new regime, people thought, okay, still Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is really hungry to get back to power, is still directing them and causing trouble. But the recent events, like Mr. Azath Salley told now, we see the Justice Minister himself accommodating them, and at times even he's being their spokesman. He's acting like their spokesman. Even fabricated stories, he hasn't proved the statistics, but he is widely speaking about it. So it's worrying the community now. And the question as to where is this Bodu Bala Sena is coming from is still at large, because now the people are confused who to blame, because they were still supported by the current regime as well.
So, Azath, would it be fair to say then that the BBS are a kind of elite-sponsored discriminatory movement. I mean, in British politics, the British National Party, for instance, has very little elite support.
Yeah.
UKIP does have a degree of elite support with inside the political establishment, with inside the media. So would you say it's more like that?
Actually speaking, the previous government that sponsored the BBS, not only BBS, the Ravana, the Ravir, the Singhale, several extremist movements were formed by them and supported by them, and monthly money was paid to them. And with all these things, the president of that time, Mahinda Rajapaksa, did not take BBS to a negotiating table. His brother was handling it, but he never took them to the table. But this, the present president, bringing them down to his table for negotiation, and that meeting was only for the Mahanayakas to meet, the religious leaders, religious dignitaries to meet, not an extremist element, not a terrorist element, but this guy who calls himself a monk. He was wanting to come into politics. That is why this BBS was created. And Mahinda Rajapaksa thought that bringing him there, the Sinhalese vote will turn towards him. So they were working for his presidential campaign. But later he decided he should be the candidate, and he himself became a candidate at the last general election. He couldn't secure 3,000 votes. The entire Sri Lanka, he got only 20,000 votes. So the country and the president and the government knows that this is not a popular guy to be treated. And you see, we've fought to bring justice into Sri Lanka. After Mahinda Rajapaksa, we promised to give all the commissions in Sri Lanka, the Judiciary Commission, the Public Service Commission, the Bribery Commission, the Police Commission, all these commissions were formed. But that is not being properly implemented. You can see the police being influenced, and that comes on public TV. The IGP talking on television that the minister is forcing him that so-and-so should not be arrested. And he gives an assurance, don't worry, he won't be arrested. So that the independence is lost. Judiciary, when this monk has been taken in for several cases into court, the judge of the court gets up and asks him, are you comfortable? Are you okay? He puts a white cloth on the chair, and 3-4 times the judge gets up and gives him respect. So you are talking to a criminal. You are talking to a person who has broken the law of the country. How can the judge get up and ask him these things? So that means the judiciary is also being influenced.
Now you've tried to take this one step further by writing to the United Nations, petitioning the United Nations. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Actually speaking, I was in Geneva last week for a conference, and then I made this opportunity to go and inform them of the current situation, because we don't feel that the present government, though I am part and parcel of the government, I am one person who was very eloquent and a person who propagated good governance and was instrumental in bringing both the government, Prime Minister and the President to power. But today I feel ashamed for having done this, because my community is today suffering due to this. Because what we want from the government is not to favor the Muslim, but let the law take its own law and order situation should be there, and let it take its turn. But here, when you influence the police, as I am the Justice Minister, I will not allow him to be arrested. If you say like that, the suppression of judiciary is taking place. We don't want that to happen. What we say is government, now that we are blaming the government for everything, there is something good that has happened after the change. People are not getting killed on the road. White vans are not coming and abducting you. TV stations are not being attacked. All those things are there. Democracy is there to an extent. But when you say the independent commissions that have been appointed are today being influenced by the government and the ministers and the Prime Minister. Okay. So this should not take place. If this happens, people lose hope. So what we want is that, as I have made a complaint to the police against Galabodakti Nyansar, the Secretary General of the BBS, Ampitiya Sumanratna priest who is from the east, who were trying to go to see him only last week, you would have seen on news. Then one Prasad and one Abdul Razik from our community. 2 people were arrested and they were kept on remand prison for at least 3 weeks. And these 2 guys have still not been arrested.
Okay. Irfan, let's talk a little bit now about the reaction of the expatriate community now. I mean, obviously that's reflected through your website and whatnot. Well, just tell us a bit about that.
I mean, they're very widely worried. The events unfolded. Now, frankly speaking, we people who are living abroad, including the vast majority of people who lives in Middle East, they were widely expecting some sort of peace. When I say peace, the peace is to say that every citizen is treated equal and the law and order is implemented. We don't really want any sort of sufferings of these hate-mongering people who just show up and say we just want to destroy the Quran and say no, Allah is wrong, that and name, and then everything you can think of. Now this has gone to a certain level which we were not expecting in this good governance, what they call good governance. We can't tolerate this. To be honest, every single person living abroad who gets to read the news, who gets to see the videos coming up, who gets to know what is happening back home, and because of their position where they look that into, they know everything in bulk. They don't have to wait to see a television to understand what has happened. They get to see it immediately with the power of social media today. So they're really worried. Everyone is worried. And it's very sad. Because
some of the videos that have been posted by the BBS supporters, they're not just sort of political attack videos. They're insulting and abusive.
Yes, very abusive, and they're taking it for granted. They have no control over it. Sri Lanka, especially in this government, they were promising about controlling online hate campaigns. And they said, we will control everything in this government. We'll make sure everyone is treated equally. But for some reason, this government has failed to win the hearts and minds of people once again, just like the previous regime, because we are not expecting this sort of lenient approach towards hatred campaigns, regardless of who is doing it. Now, Mr. Azath Salley, in his complaint, based on which they arrested 2 people, one of the person was a Muslim guy. So they were neutral. The politicians who represent the Muslim community in Sri Lanka, they were neutral. They just wanted to make sure the country is peaceful. But for a certain extent, they are doing something. Yes, things are happening, but not what we wanted as peaceful citizens.
Just tell me a moment, because we mentioned the petition that you've delivered to the UN. Have you had any response from them yet? And what are you calling on them to do?
Actually, what we want them to do, they are already in a mission in Sri Lanka to bring normalcy and to see that all the decisions that they have taken at the Human Rights Commission being fulfilled. And up to today, they have not seen very little progress that they have seen. So they are coming in January, and this is also will be another topic that they will be taking, because they are also aware of the present situation. All what we are requesting UN or all the other agencies is that minorities are the people who brought this government to power. Especially if you take the Tamil and Muslim community. Today, the Mahinda Rajapaksa clan is accusing me because out of the 2 million Muslims there, 1.5 million are voters. Out of the 1.5 million voters, 90% voted with Maithripala Sirisena, wanting good governance. So Mahinda Rajapaksa's estimation was that he was winning this election with, they have taken 300,000 Muslim votes and said that he is winning. So we have ensured that even he doesn't get that. So now the entire accusation is coming on to me because the other 2 Muslim leaders came after the postal election. During the postal
election. Just to stick with the UN question though, what are you asking the UN to do?
What we are asking is justice to prevail, and all these hate campaigns, the police must take action and the perpetrators must be arrested.
Okay, so just let's talk a bit about the police as well, because the accusation that you're making is not just that there's a kind of violent attacks on Muslims, but that the police are complicit in this, or at least not investigating them properly. Is that right?
Yes. What we need to understand there is now, although the police are doing certain amount of work, let's say recently on the 3rd of December, led by the BBS again, a group of people tried to go to enter an area called Batiklo in the eastern province of the country. Now, of course, police got involved. They actually blocked them from going after another area called Punane, I think. They stopped them there. But after 2 weeks, the Justice Minister himself took them there. So from a democratic point of view, we will have to understand, yes, that is correct. Now, the Justice Minister needs to speak to the people who create problems. That can be acceptable. But can they take that for granted and still attack the minorities? This is where the question comes. Now that they...
It sounds to me, though, in your description of this case, as if the police acted and then were kind of overridden by the Justice Minister. But also in cases...
Can I do a correction on that? Actually, what happened was when they had planned this tour of Batticaloa, they planned a massive gathering to go into Batticaloa, which would have created havoc if they had entered the place. So the police was good enough to get a restraining order from court, and they put a stop at the border and they said you can't enter. And police, they gave them two options. One, if you want to see the priest in Batticaloa, get into the police vehicle. 3 of you can be taken in, show the priest and bring you back, or get back to Colombo. We are not allowing you to go. So that entire thing was patched up and they were sent back. That was a good move by the police, because if they had allowed, there would have been a communal crime which would have gone worse than 1983. So thank God, touch wood, nothing happened. And after that, the minister thought that he must take them. He put him in his vehicle and took them without anybody's knowledge. Secretly, they took him to the temple in Batticaloa, showed the priest, spoke to him, and then came back, which we feel is wrong.
Okay, yeah, I get that point, but you've also in the letter to the UN raised the question of police behaviour generally.
Yeah.
So in this case, you're saying the police acted correctly, but in other cases not, presumably.
Yeah.
So just tell us about what you think is going on
Why I say
generally.
this is the politicization. The politicians are behind all these moves and does not allow the police commission to move independently. The judiciary commission, the bribery commission, all these commissions are already implemented like we promised in 8th of January 2015. But the problem is the implementation is not being allowed and there is interference. This is why we are not getting justice.
Okay, so do you think, Irfan, do you think that it's a case that there is simply political misdirection of the police, or are there elements in the police that are sympathetic to the BBS, or both?
We can't say they're so much sympathetic, but what we can say is the influence of politics in Sri Lanka police, which they call now, earlier they used to call police department, now it's called Sri Lanka police. Now, we know that the IGP who came into power recently, he vowed to be the best police officer who the history can actually witness. But then we also witness that his role has been limited as well. So that clearly shows, yes, there is an amount of influence from the political side, or let's say from the government side, which is restricting them in implementing the right thing. So we expect, now for example, I can say President Maithripala Sirisena made a lot of good things to win the hearts and minds of Sinhalese people. The recent one being when the British colonial rule was there in Sri Lanka. In 1818, they declared, they issued a decree against 19 people, branding them as traitors for treason. Now, in this government, Mr. Maithripala Sirisena revoked it and declared them as heroes. We welcome that. Well, that was in the perspective or the point of view from the British rulers, but now they've done it. We welcome that. However, in the same way, we expect a fair justice. Just before 1818, in 1804, once again, the British rulers, they branded another 169 people for treason as traitors. Out of that, there were at least 7 Muslims and Tamil-speaking other community, the minority people. Now, isn't that what we expect? We expect, okay, if you can do something which was declared on 1818, we should also address something which was already issued in 1804. Now, this is the fair justice which the people are expecting from the government. I think for some extent they're failing.
So, Azath, are there any parallels with what's happening to the Rohingya Muslims?
Of course, yes, because at the beginning itself, I was very optimistic and I had objected when Ashin Viratu was invited to Sri Lanka during the regime of Mahinda Rajapaksa. More than 300 presidential security officers were given to him, and they were all dressed up, and this, especially the Budubala Sena Secretary General was more than a president at that time. You can see pictures with all the MSD guys and the PSD guys sitting with him, standing with him, to bring another terrorist into the country. So they bought the terrorist. The Time magazine had called him a terrorist, saffron dressed terrorist. So that was the face of that Time magazine. So we protested, but still the government brought them down. We are not saying Buddhism has to have the prime place in Sri Lanka, no doubt about it. But we are a community with self-respect. We don't go and ask for anything from anybody. Let it be Mahinda government, Maitri government or Ranil government. We don't go and beg anything for our community. But what we say, allow us to live in peace. This is what we want. Peace is our motive, and Islam stands for peace.
Irfan, do you see any parallels with the Rohingya?
Of course, the previous way it was handled and executed in the previous regime was very much parallel to what happened in Rohingya. The BBC Secretary Nyanasar Rahimi, he was publicly declaring that he just wanted to follow Asin Wiratu, and they just wanted to keep going, and they just wanted to restrict Muslim trade. And they also wanted to make sure that Muslims are treated like second-class citizens, if I can put that way. And they wanted to make sure follow the same methods that Asin Wiratu's 969 implemented, like hoisting special flags on Buddhist shops so that the people know this is not a Buddhist shop, and they don't want to go there and support their trade or economically. So they just wanted to bring up an economic sanction against the community and isolate them, and by that way they just wanted to push forward with the same agenda in Myanmar. But thankfully, we have a different approach in Sri Lanka. Our politicians, including the gentleman sitting next to me, they have a different approach, and we cannot say the rulers are taking that path, but there are things that's happening in a way that we cannot even imagine. So we just want to find out why the government cannot stop it, and they can't put a full stop for everything.
Now tomorrow,
we're just coming towards the end of the interview now. But to just tell me what you think is the way forward here now.
Now, before that, just want to finish with one. Is tomorrow the 30th. They want to have another demonstration against the abaya, the Muslim dress, and they have asked people to come and gather in front of the Fort railway station. Up to now, the government has taken no step to stop that or to arrest the secretary. That is the Singhalay, another organization. So the Rajapaksa regiment is working very closely with these people, wanting to come back to power. The biggest mistake that my government has been doing right throughout is not arresting the people who have done mistakes during the past. Even robbing the country, burning out TV stations, abducting people, white van conspiracies. All these things are in court only, but no action has been taken. If action is being taken, and if all these guys are there for robbing the country and looting the country situation would have been far different from what it is today. Because they are all outside, that they are pumping money. Millions of money being pumped to this organization to bring in disharmony in the country, to have problems in the country. Strike is continuing all over. All this is done by the previous regime. And now Gotabaya Rajapaksa himself is declaring that I am the next presidential candidate. So they are working towards that. That is the actual situation.
And finally, just briefly, in your view, what's the way out of this?
The President, Mr. Maithripala Sirisena, should just keep up his promise. He promised a lot when he was competing for the position which he is holding now. So all what he has to do is just fulfill the promise and just make sure that people live in peace in the country, because I'll have to know, Buddhist people, we cannot just point out and say all of them are doing or supporting all these of hatred campaigns or encouraging it. They are very peace-loving people, but the minority or this fraction which has power and influence from the top authorities are not stopping, which means it will keep on spreading.
Okay. Irfan Iqbal and Azath Salley, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you both for coming into the studio and talking us through that. But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on this episode of The Report. I want to thank all my guests on today's show and to thank you for watching.